All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Robbie Joseph, and welcome to another episode of the VocAlliance podcast, where we interview interesting and contributing members of the community. And joining us today is Alecx Lorica, one of the coaches from Sightlines Actors Space, where they teach the Sanford Meisner Method of acting.
Yes.
Alex, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so excited. I've been getting some students from VocAlliance, and I'm
Awesome.
happy to share more about sightlines and the Meissner technique and any questions that the community might have. The
Oh,
burning questions about Meissner.
super happy about that. I first heard about, Meisner from my GVAA coach, Steve Riesberg, many years ago. He
Mhm.
told me that among all the acting techniques out there, this one in particular was best suited for voice actors. But I was I was dismayed to find out that no one was teaching it here in the Philippines until now. That is. So first, thank you so much for bringing it to our shores, or being one of the first to bring it to our shores. What took so long?
There's generally a lack of exposure for a lot of acting techniques here in the
Mhm.
Philippines. And I think that also stems from the education crisis that we're currently suffering through right now.
Mhm.
Like there are also a lot of experienced actors who aren't familiar with Meisner, which also boggles me. Because when you study acting history, that's one of the big names in terms of like the
Right.
pillars of acting,
Stanislavski,
right? Yes,
Adler. Yeah.
Stanislavski, Adler, Meisner, Strasberg. And I think that's why it took so long. I was just lucky enough that when I took theater arts in Ateneo, I was exposed to Meisner. Like it was introduced to me by my acting teacher together with other acting techniques like Michael Chekhov, Stanislavski,
Right.
and whatnot. And from there, I gravitated towards Meisner specifically because it addressed my problems as an actor. And those problems are overthinking, being
Right.
self-conscious, like
Being too
what does it
cerebral. Yeah.
yeah, cerebral, what does it mean to let go? Because I loved the analysis aspect. I
Right.
was good at understanding text and the analysis, but when it came to letting go, I always struggled. And because as a person, I'm very cerebral. And
Right.
so because of that, that made me want to learn Meisner as an actor and at the same time to be able to teach it too. Because the issues I had as an actor is common amongst a lot of actors here.
Right. Yeah. A lot
Yeah.
of voice actors, especially, they become too, like I said earlier, too cerebral, too in their head,
Yeah.
too analytical, that uh they sort of like forget to be in the moment, to be
Mhm.
spontaneous and immediate in the way they act. And uh, so what is the Meisner method all about? How is it different from other acting methods, that you've
Okay,
encountered?
so like most acting techniques, it's an extension of Stanislavski. So it stems from Stanislavski, but the difference is with Meisner, it really focuses on behavior and focuses on eliminating self consciousness by means of putting your attention on the other person.
Hmm.
And not just the other person, by putting your attention externally. So that helps eliminate self consciousness. And one of the biggest strengths too of Meisner is it teaches you how to truly listen,
Right.
be in the moment and truly listen and take in your scene partner's behavior. And it's very freeing because regardless of who your scene partner is, there's something to work off of.
Right.
So before I was very intimidated by improvisation. I felt like I had to be funny or interesting, but now because of the technique, it has given me the confidence to just do improv. Like I love improv now because I just need another person to work off of and I'm good. Like to be able to really trust my instincts and not overthink and just jump is something that confidence is something that I gained from learning how to teach Meisner and the Meisner training, like doing it consistently. So now I super love improvisation.
Okay, I wanted to touch upon, yeah, it's just something that you just said now, trusting your instincts. What if
Yeah.
you don't have the right instincts? Because
Oh, that's
some people do n- not necessarily have the you know uh, the right concept when it comes to trusting yourself.
mhm.
How do you manage that?
So with Meisner, it gives you a it gives you tools and a process
Hmm.
to work on developing your instincts. And
Mm,
what it boils down to is when you're acting and when you're doing the exercise, we must take down all the social editors that we've developed over the years. What are these social editors? Being polite, right?
yeah.
Afraid of judgment, the other
Uh-huh.
people, afraid of offending people. Because once you let that in, you're being self conscious and you're not trusting your authentic impulse
And you're not focusing on
on your
the
scene
partner. Yeah,
partner. Exactly. So that stops you from actually following your gut and your
I
instincts.
see.
When
Yeah.
you when you start doubting your choices, then it becomes inauthentic. And so it's a lot of the training is unlearning
Mhm.
and taking down these filters. And then once you take it down and you're able to put your attention on the other person, now the next thing is to really allow yourself to be affected by the other person fully. That's another thing because in real life, we are asked to not feel in a lot of situations or brush off because we gotta survive out of self preservation to get through the day. But when you're acting, you need to be able to access that vulnerability. And when you fully allow yourself to be affected by the other person's behavior in the moment, that will help fuel you to have impulses to follow
Gotcha.
based on the other person's behavior. It's like, okay, I'm taking in their behavior. It's really affecting me. This is how I want to respond
Hmm.
without thinking about it.
Yeah.
So it's tricky, and that's why consistent practice is so important because acting is a muscle and it's a more complicated muscle because it's not just physical. You know, you're working with your imagination, your mind, and your heart. And so it really takes time because it's such an odd job. You
Mm.
know, we're playing with our brains. And so it it's not something that you can just wing. And that's what Sightlines offers for actors is to have that space, um, kind of like an actor's gym, like a space to keep working on your acting technique.
A playground, a
Yeah, a
laboratory.
playground. Exactly. A laboratory
So
for
you can experiment.
actors.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, one thing that we've always taught in our own workshops is to really get rid of the ego, right?
Yes.
That's one of the biggest obstacles that a lot of voice actors face. And uh, one way that that sort of manifests is being so concerned about your voice, for example, right?
Yeah.
And so we teach people, to take the voice out of voiceover, right? And princip- in principle, it's the same thing with Meisner. It's really taking the ego out of the equation, right?
Yes.
And so I really
Absolutely.
appreciate that.
Absolutely. And the thing is, it's also embracing yourself.
Hmm.
Like, because your biggest asset is that there's only one you. What you can offer cannot be offered by anyone else. So the mastery of your own uniqueness, and that's why with how Meisner is structured in terms of progression, you really get to know the core of yourself first, and then you slowly add elements and then branch out. Like yes, later on we're gonna do character work and character differences. That's where the accents come in and different voices. But to be able to do that whilst being truthful, you gotta know yourself first. Like one
Have
of
foundation.
exactly the foundation first. An example would be Bradley Cooper. He talks about this, wherein he said in an interview that he spent a decade mastering himself first before delving into other characters. And you can see it in his performance that when he's doing other characters, he's just really being like you're completely immersed in his portrayal. It doesn't feel caricature,
Right.
and that's down to really mastering the foundation.
Yeah. One of the things that we try to espouse uh, is self awareness first. diba?
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, I see a lot of parallelisms or parallels, between what we teach as in our own courses and the Meisner method, and I'm just so glad that you guys are around. There, unfortunately, in VocAlliance, the coaches are not always available because they do have careers as voice actors,
Yeah.
and so I'm really glad that you guys are there. You're a lot more available. You're a lot more reachable. so so yeah, I'm really hoping that and you have regular sessions also, diba? Is that every
Yes.
month or?
Yeah, so now we've adapted a new we're now adapting a new learning model. So it's cycle based. So every month we have a set of classes. So generally we have online classes on weekday nights here in the
Nice.
Philippines and weekday mornings, and then in-person classes also on weekends. Sorry,
So,
weekend mornings online, and then weekend evenings, afternoons would be in person. So that's kind of going to be a regular schedule. And how it's going to be is it's more tailor fit to the actor.
mhm,
So you are only able to progress to the next stages upon endorsement by the designated Meissner teacher. Because I tried the set classes, like how it usually is here in the Philippines.
yeah.
And it doesn't work because a lot of the time the actors get overwhelmed when new elements are introduced because the progression of each actor is so different.
True.
And so in most cases, they really need a couple of rounds of each level before it really sinks in.
Mhm.
And so that's why we've adjusted this model. So it's kind of it's similar to how a lot of acting studios in the US are structured. So let's say Playhouse West, which is a Meisner studio, Meisner acting school in Los Angeles and Philadelphia. It's like that too. So you only progress to the next stages when the teacher sees that you're consistent in the elements that are being asked of you from that particular stage.
I love it. We have the same philosophy.
Right? I love it. Yeah, because
Exactly.
I'm also frustrated with acting workshops that are so short term. It's like it's an ongoing process. Like this
Exactly.
is a
Lifelong learning.
lifestyle.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a long term thing, and you just gotta put in the work to train. And my advice to a lot of actors here, like the training is the work itself too. Like acting outside of a job is part of the job,
Yeah.
and that's something that I really want to instill um, with Filipino actors, most especially, the value of training.
I, okay. So, as someone who's taken some of your classes,
Yeah.
I can certainly vouch for its effectivity. I'm still learning, of course, but I really see how important the process is. You really have to take things, one step at a time in order to sort of peel away the artifice and open yourself up
Yeah.
and become more authentic and sensitive to your scene partner. Take the ego out and all that. Um, Now, what would you consider the Meisner method the be all and end all of all acting techniques?
No, not necessarily. Because with myself, I also mix. I learn from all acting techniques.
Hmm.
I would say though that from all the acting techniques that I've been exposed to so far, Meisner is the best one when it comes to the foundation.
Okay.
When it comes to the foundation and building your instincts, like getting to know yourself.
Right.
Like I always tell my students, I wish I started with Meisner because then there'd be less habits to unlearn. But I also mix. I am a fan of Michael Chekhov. I would love to learn how to teach that at some point because it's really good when it comes to imagination work,
Yeah.
uh, matching the physical gestures, how that would inform like your inner life also as the character.
Right.
And so there's value in all acting techniques, and I encourage my students to expose themselves and like try out different techniques and different teachers because there's a lot of value to it. And even with how Sightlines is positioned right now, yes, right now primarily Meister is the one that's being taught, but ideally in the future I want multiple acting techniques to be taught under Sightlines. That's why in with the name I didn't put Meisner there, because I didn't want it to be locked in one particular acting technique.
Mhm. Right.
Because I myself, as an actor and acting teacher, my philosophy is just keep learning, and then you craft your own process based on what works for you.
Yeah. You know, we also teach a foundational acting course, you know, at VocAlliance, and we really wanted to incorporate the Meisner technique. So,
Yeah.
and so what we did instead was we just introduced the concept to the our students, and then push them to to take it.
Yeah.
Because
Oh.
I mean, our foundation course is, for me, just part and parcel of your growth as a voice actor, right? If you
Hmm.
want to improve your craft, you really have to look at different schools of thought. You have to look at different. You have to take classes under different coaches, and
Yes, absolutely.
yeah. So I'm really appreciative of what you just said earlier. So yeah, we don't want to lock people into just one particular method, because even us, like as coaches, we try to reinvent our methods as well, based on the um, feedback that we get
Mhm.
from our students, and then we also try to look at other schools of thought uh, that might help inform our methods even better. So yeah, definitely, like when it comes to learning acting techniques, we we really want people to explore as much as they can. So we're so happy that you're around, because we really believe in the Meissner technique.
Oh.
Um, okay, I uh, what doesn't the Meissner technique teach you, or what are
Oh.
yeah?
I
Have
think
you ever
in
considered
terms of, yes, I think in terms of character work,
it? Hmm.
there are other techniques that are stronger. And that's why I specifically thought of Michael Chekhov,
Hmm.
because Michael Chekhov is really good when it comes to the fantasy work and the character work aspect.
Mm, right.
And so that, not to say that Meisner can, it's just that Meisner alone is not enough to be able to service that.
Okay. So you really need, yeah, which
Yeah.
again gives you another reason to try and explore.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And also because with character differences, ideally you have like a voice coach, an accent coach, or a dialect coach, or a
A
movement
different set of
coach.
skills
Different
altogether.
set,
Yeah.
exactly, different set of skills. So that's what Meisner doesn't teach.
Okay.
Meisner helps with finding the truthfulness underneath all those other elements. But to be able to harness like the other elements, you need to go to other teachers also. So it's really encouraged to mix. It's so important. Like the ideal situation, it would be like you have your acting technique, but you also have voice and movement
Hmm.
that can address the character aspects too that are being asked of you by the text or by your director. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So can you tell us a little bit more about the repetition exercise?
Ooh, the repetition exercise. So the repetition exercise is a tool
Hmm.
to help hone the foundational skills that you need as an actor. So the foundational skills that you're developing through the repetition exercise are really doing working off the other person and opening up your heart or allowing yourself to be affected fully by your scene partner's behavior.
Right.
So those three specifically. So it really helps with eliminating self consciousness. And I would say the repetition exercise is similar to how singers need to vocalize,
Hmm.
right? I
Yeah.
would say like the repetition exercise would be the equivalent for
The warm up.
actors.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's your warm up to really open up your senses. So that's one of like the warm up tools and one of the tools to really help you work on developing your instincts. And then later on, that progresses to the independent activity exercise. That's where you start delving into imaginary circumstances.
Yeah.
So, but the repetition exercise is a staple throughout the progression. It's something that you can utilize in many ways, like many iterations of it can be used, even when there's already a script involved.
Yeah.
Like you
And
can still use it.
and it's very enjoyable. It's
It's
super
so
fun.
fun.
Yeah. It
Yeah,
is.
it's very liberating. I think that's the thing about it. It's very liberating, not just for actors, but for people in general when they get exposed to Meisner and they're given that safe space to freely express themselves, which
Hmm.
is quite rare. Like we don't really have a lot of spaces like that throughout our day-to-day lives, right?
Yeah,
And so when we get to play in that space, it's so liberating.
absolutely. Okay, so what are the principles of the Meisner technique?
Okay, so I principles, I would say maybe it's best that I talk about the foundational skills because those are
Hmm.
like the pillars of acting. So I just mentioned freely doing, working off the other person, and opening up your heart.
Hmm.
The fourth one is inventing specifically and meaningfully to find a strong point of view. So this is where the imaginary circumstance comes in. And then the fifth one is emotional preparation. So those are the pillars of acting, the Meissner technique. And then there are other um, things introduced later on when it comes to scene work. One of the biggest tools that we utilize for scene work is improvisation.
Yeah,
So Meisner is heavily known for repetition exercise and improvisation and emotional preparation, those three in particular.
cool.
Yeah, and using improvisation as a means to free the actor from the text, because Meisner says that the text is your greatest enemy. It easily gets you in your head. So how do you maintain the freedom when you're doing script work? And especially nowadays, I think it's so essential to know um, how to effectively improvise, like to develop that skill, because not just with voice acting, but in multiple mediums, like with film and TV nowadays, they improvise a lot. Like
Yeah.
Succession, improv, like all the
Oh,
time.
I didn't know that.
And yeah, they utilize improvisation a lot. So it's not
That's
a tool
incredible.
that is just for comedy. It's an essential tool for all actors because for those of you who want to pursue acting, especially outside of the Philippines, improv is so key because there are a lot of scenes that are improvised in film and TV sets. And to be able to do that, um you mustn't doubt your choices in the moment. It's really that being able to follow your impulse without thinking about it.
And just
That's
yeah,
so
just living in the moment,
exactly.
living truthfully, not attaching yourself to the result and enjoying the journey.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like Viola Davis talks about it in an interview how before she would super prepare and like write down the backstory of the characters and whatnot. But nowadays she doesn't do that anymore because you need to leave room to be surprised because you don't know what your scene partner
Yeah.
prepared
Be
or what
inventive. Yeah.
exactly to be able to just work off what you're given also throughout the day. Also Matthew McFadden. I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly. He's in Succession,
Hmm.
and he talks about it too. How in a lot of the scenes he doesn't really prepare. He just comes in. He prepares, of course, like knowing his character and like his lines, but he doesn't plan how the scene will go.
Right. I think
It's
it's the same
really
thing. I think it's the same thing also in shows like Arrested Development,
yeah,
Schitt's Creek,
yeah.
if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Schitt's Creek for sure. Like you come in, you don't plan how the scene will go. It's really just you're playing and exploring when you're
Yeah.
there, and you just work off whatever's happening in the moment.
And sometimes magic just happens, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like the best scenes happen when something unexpected happens, and you just use it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what makes acting so enjoyable. And
absolutely.
I think it's easy to see how this can have like real world applications and benefits to your own life in general, right?
Yeah,
It's not just an acting method. It's a philosophy. It's a
it
way of life.
is.
It and so how has it changed your life?
Oh,
You mentioned that you like
yes,
improv a little bit
yes.
more now. What else?
Improv. Just
Mental health.
in terms of mental health is just not really caring about what people think of me
Yeah.
or how I come off. I just
Yeah.
because before it'd be like, oh, maybe they're gonna judge me if I do
Yeah.
this or that. So now it's really just if I want something, I go for it and I do
Yeah.
it. Like
Love it.
one of my philosophies is don't let fear dictate your decisions. Like, don't make choices out of fear. Like, acknowledge the feeling, let it exist. But then really think, if you really want it, despite the fear, just go for it and do it. I'm such a like, that's really a main philosophy of mine. I wouldn't have been a full-time acting coach right now and a designated Meisner teacher if I didn't just do the research and go for it. Despite like doubts, because one of the things that I was having trouble with was the fact that I haven't acted in a while. So it's been a while since I graduated theater arts. And I didn't know, because this happened during the pandemic, I didn't know if I still had it.
Mm.
Um, so those doubts when it comes to my skills as an actor and as an acting teacher. But then I was like, you know what? Let's move that aside. Let's just go for it and do it. And then I took the training, and it was so wonderful because I had so many classmates who are MFA graduates and professors and acting schools in the US. But what was so wonderful was they were so humble and generous. Like, I didn't feel any judgment at all. Like, they just listened to what I had to say, and that helped me like gain my confidence back when it comes to myself as an actor and as an acting teacher. And so nowadays, like I think that's one of like the biggest things that the Meister training like gave me. And so now it's like, maybe there are other like artists who would judge me given that I'm a young acting coach, but I don't really let that get to me anymore. It's like they can stay there. I'm just gonna keep doing what I do. Yeah.
And just for the sake of everybody, uh, you're 25, right?
Yes, I'm
25,
25.
okay, yeah. See, and I remember when taking your class, I was so enamored by you. I was so impressed by how insightful you were and how sensitive you were also. And it's really wonderful to see a coach like that, and to be so young and have this wealth of knowledge and understanding and wisdom. And so I just want to say, Alex, you're a treasure trove. So
Oh,
I really sincerely hope there are more uh, members of the community who take, you know, your classes, because they're really. I mean, it's good. It's such a fruitful endeavor, talaga. So, um, I think we can pretty much leave it at that. Let's end on a high
yeah.
note.
Thank you so much. This has been so wonderful, and thank you for allowing me to share more about Meisner and Sightlines to this wonderful community of voice actors that you have. And I'm really happy with what you guys are doing. Like, philosophy wise, like with Sightlines, we're so aligned. Like,
Absolutely.
growing this community and bringing actors together. Because that's another thing. Like, my frustration before, it's like, oh, I feel so alone as an actor, whereas no, you should be connecting to people because it's
Yeah.
such a community thing, because you're acting with people. So to keep people connected is so important, especially given where we're at now, the world, and with the pandemic, like connection is so valuable, and collaboration too.
Collaboration, and that's the key. Like we call it co-opetition, right? I mean, even if we're teaching, we're also coaches, for voice acting. We absolutely think it's imperative that you don't just stick to one school of thought, that you go
Yeah.
out there and see what else is there for
Yeah.
you, right? And so, yeah,
Absolutely.
and that's why we're going to do whatever we can to help promote you as well, and make sure that we drive as much traffic to your programs as we can. Speaking of which, what sort of programs does Sightlines offer right now? Is there anything you want to plug?
Yes. So for October, we have our Meisner acting training. So we have a couple of fundamentals classes. So that's the first stage of the training, fundamentals. The ones for October are online classes.
Hmm.
And then if you're not sure yet if you can commit to a whole month of class, I have an introduction to Meisner class, which is one session, also in October, latter part of October. So there you get to know more about the technique, and you get to see how I am as an acting coach. And I think that's important. That's something that I offer to a lot of students, because it's so important to see how the acting coach is before committing to the class too,
Yeah.
just to see if I'm the coach for you as well. And then later on in November, we're planning to have some in-person classes.
Yay.
So hopefully those push through in the in-person classes. And yeah, so our classes are monthly, so you can just keep following us on Facebook or Instagram, Sightlines Actors Space, and we also have our website. So those are constantly updated.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alex. And yeah, that concludes our interview for today. Please, if you have any interest in the Meisner acting technique, please do seek out Alex. You'll find some of her posts on the group page, and we'll also include some of your other info and contact details when we post this on the VocAlliance community page. So thank you so much, Alex.
Well, thank
And
you too,
yeah,
Robbie.
I can't wait to take more of your classes. That's my seal of approval, guys.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Bye. Thank you so much, Alex.
Bye.